Agenda for our meeting can be found sitting on page 24. First, I'd like to introduce those who are sharing in this afternoon's session with us. Our accompanist on the piano is Claire Smith, and Cliff and Wanda Hagman will be also accompanying our first hymn this afternoon. Kathy Sharp, just behind me, is serving as our parliamentarian this afternoon, and we really don't want her to have to work or do anything at all. So best case scenario is that Kathy just gets to sit there and enjoy the company. Thank you, Kathy. Again, as I mentioned this morning, David Pointer in the back is our head usher, and anything that requires ushering, go to see Dave, or he'll take charge of that. And his son Darius is also assisting him. Our conference co-chairs, Jill Brunette, Ashley Whittam, and Diane Weberly have just done a phenomenal job of keeping everything going, having those packets in front of you, having the PowerPoints to guide you, having chairs to sit in. Every aspect of this day and tomorrow is really largely thanks to Ashley and Jill and Diane. So I would just ask for some gratitude. Sharing with us this afternoon, Lisa Meath from our Fairbanks group will be offering our invocation. And of course, you'll be hearing from both Donald Welch, our Mission Center Financial Officer, as well as Sean Langdon. He has a really long title: Mission Center Invitation Support Minister, Youth Ministries Specialist, and Camping Ministries Director, and soon to be the Mission Center President of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Oh, no. We'll time warp later. Rocky Mountain Mission Center. So I couldn't resist that. Later this afternoon, Ashley Whittam will be offering a moment of blessing for us as we take a break from the business and just have a time to recenter ourselves before our priesthood calls. During that portion of our service, Carrie Welch and Jeanette Harrison will be sharing a reading of a scripture. And following the calls, the priesthood calls, Steve Pomeroy of the Renton congregation will be offering a prayer of support for our candidates. And Gary Farnsworth will be offering a prayer of blessing at the close of our session today. A few quick edits to the agenda. On page 26, you will note that it says 10-minute break. Well, we did a 10-minute break when we were doing Zoom conferences because everyone had their own private bathroom at home. We no longer have that luxury, so it will be a 15-minute break. So please make the best use of that time. So we'll have a 15-minute break, but when we get to that portion, we will announce what time we will be coming back into session together. Also on page 27, following the moment of blessing from Ashley, and just before the scripture reading, we will be singing a hymn that got omitted from the order of our agenda. So that will be "You Have Come Down to the Lakeshore," and of course the lyrics will be printed on the screen, but that will be right after the moment of blessing. Also, when we have the priesthood calls and the affirming testimonies, Mark Murphy was unable to be with us today, unfortunately, and Susan Oxley will be sharing her testimony of David Harrison's call. And finally, I will be adjourning the meeting just prior to the closing hymn. And so we will, following Steve's prayer of support, I will adjourn the meeting with some announcements, and we'll sing a hymn, and Gary will close us, and we will be free to go about our evening. So please remember to see the flyers in the back of your bulletin. There's a number of announcements of events coming up. There's a calendar of Mission Center events going on, and so we just want to be sure you see all of those flyers in the back. As I mentioned, there will be a 15-minute break mid-afternoon, but of course, if you need to take a break before then, please do so. You're welcome to. And at this time, I'd just like to invite Ron Harmon to share his greetings with the conference.
Thank you, President Naten. I bet you don't hear that very often, do you? But I do so much appreciate Kim and her leadership of the Mission Center, as I do the rest of the staff. And oh, wait, you know what? You guys look so good out there this afternoon. This feels so good, doesn't it? Look around the room. How long has it been since you've been able to look around the room and see your friends, your brothers and sisters in Christ in a gathering? Well, hold on a second here. All right, this group over here. Everybody smile. I love it. Okay, this group over here. Look up, everybody. Awesome. Oh, hang on a minute. I never do that, and I've always wanted to. So I figure all the bets are off this afternoon. This will be my last Mission Center conference with Greater Pacific Northwest, so it's hard to tell what's going to happen this afternoon. I do want to say greetings in the peace of Jesus Christ, and it does feel kind of like coming home this weekend to be with you. It's been so good to have the chance to greet you, many of you at least personally, and look forward to continuing opportunity to do that. Steve Veazey, Scott Murphy, and Stacy Cram are actually aware that we are meeting this weekend in conference, and they send their greetings as well and want us to know that we are in their thoughts and their prayers. I also took the liberty of sharing with a couple of my other brothers and sisters in the Council of 12 that we would be in conference this weekend. And so I bring greetings from Lusaka in Zambia, from our sister and apostle, Catherine Mambwe, and also from Honduras, from our brother and friend, Carlos Enrique Mejia. Friends, we belong to one another in Christ. We are a globally connected community of vision and compassionate action around the world. So I have just a couple of updates that I want to share with you. First of all, those of you who have been tracking World Conference probably have noticed we have a long list of legislation for World Conference this year. The First Presidency is requesting input from the fields of the church in prioritizing that list of legislation of World Conference resolutions. Sometime after Mission Center Conference, Kim will be sharing an online survey link for the Greater Pacific Northwest Mission Center that will provide you an opportunity to share your thoughts about the priority of that legislation anonymously. So we are interested in hearing from the church, feelings from around the church about how the presidency should prioritize that legislation. So be looking for a link sometime after Mission Center Conference. Also, I know we talked about this morning. There's still slots available to be a delegate for World Conference. So if you're like on the edge of your seat and you're thinking, well, I'm not sure, I've been kind of thinking about it, but it's kind of expensive and I'm not sure, it's a long way to get there. And I want to encourage you to come because we need your voice. We need your presence at World Conference, a gathering like no other in the life of the church. How many of you have been to World Conference? How many of you would say it's an experience like no other in the life of the church? It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and it's right here in our home country in the United States. So I just want to encourage you, if you've thought about coming but have never come, please make the effort to come. You will be blessed because of it. Okay. Also, hopefully you've been seeing the way forward messages. I know they've been publicized in this mission center from President Veazey. There's 9 messages in total. I want to just focus on something briefly that Steve shared in one of his last messages when he said, "What is the strategic plan for the church?" He said, "I can offer material that answers that question. However, my basic response is you are the church's strategic plan, or better yet, we are the church's strategic plan. God's plan of redemption and restoration is incarnation. Incarnation is the eternal word becoming flesh in Jesus Christ, so that it dwells through communities of disciples that embody Christ's ministry around the world." I want to just say in this moment a deep, deep thank you. I'll have this chance in the morning, the pastor's breakfast, but that'll just be to pastors. But I want to say it to pastors, congregational financial officers, secretaries, building committee members, outreach coordinators, youth ministers, and all the other communications directors and whatever positions that are named in congregational life that help our congregations be an expression of Christ's love and peace in the places you're located. This is not an easy time to serve as a leader, and your commitment to provide leadership and ministry is not only appreciated, but it is absolutely essential for a community of Christ for our future. I just want to real quickly, if you currently serve in any capacity in congregational life, I want to ask you to stand. Any capacity. All right, let's give these folks a hand. Thank you. All right, as some of you know, over the past several years, Western Field leadership, that would include myself and Mission Center leaders and our field support minister, Richard Betts, and before him, Bill McFarland, have been engaged in a number of initiatives to support congregations and new expressions of the church to discern and lead mission into the future. Going back a decade now, I can't believe it was a decade, we initiated Leading Congregations in Mission, where congregations from this mission center and across the USA, Europe, Australia, and Canada participated. And then in 2018, we began an initiative building on congregations in mission that went into more depth, exploring the rhythm of the mission prayer, awaken, risk, and bless, and how it calls us to become adaptive, spirit-led communities in a changing world. Unfortunately, that work was significantly impacted by the pandemic, as many things were, but work continued on the development of what is now available as a field guide for implementation in congregations and small groups. And I just want to make you aware of that resource. It is available online at www.missionalleaders.org at the bottom of the landing page for that website. It's also available on our ministry tools under missional leadership and then leading new expressions. If you need help getting a copy, you would like to explore that as a resource, in helping your congregation discern and lead mission using the rhythm of the mission prayer as a framework. I'd be happy to make sure you get a copy. I know Kim would be happy, Sean would be happy to help you locate that resource. Just prior to the pandemic in the Western Field, we initiated what has become an annual campground summit in the Western Field, exploring best practices for campground management by directors and boards. We developed the first ever comprehensive framework for campgrounds that explores key financial indicators, financial, operational, and missional indicators to help our campgrounds in evaluating their viability, but also to become more effective as we move into the future. And we're looking forward to our next campground summit coming up here in February of 2023. So I'm already over time, but what I'd like to, Kim is like, right? Well, what am I gonna do, right? I said this was my last Mission Center conference, right? So I've been receiving a lot of questions about, you may have heard I'm gonna have a new gig after World Conference. And I've been receiving a number of questions about that. And so first of all, I just want to say, if you want to understand more about that, I'm more than happy to share with you about that. That's all part of the work of planning that has been occurring in the first presidency in terms of looking at leadership changes and positioning us for the future. So a number of people have been surprised to hear about that change, knowing what my current role is in the life of the church. And I'll be drawing on some skills that I used much more in my prior life before coming to work for the church. But I look forward to continuing to find creative ways to fund our mission as we move forward into the future. I'm particularly looking forward to the opportunity to work with two very talented counselors, Wim van Klinken and Carla Long. And I'm looking forward to the contributions and creativity and skills that they will bring as we look at how we fund the mission of the church in the future. So, as I said, this will be my last Mission Center conference. And I just want to say to this Mission Center how much I have appreciated being welcomed into your midst. I feel very much a part of this Mission Center. And I just want to say, please, please invite me back out here. Don't leave me stuck in Independence. So I would love to come out sometime and share with the mission, although after I'm running over now, Kim may never invite me. She may never invite me back out. But no, I just wanted to take this opportunity because this will be the last time I have with a gathering this size in the current role that I am. There are so many wonderful things happening in this Mission Center. Even the fact that we've just come out of COVID. And I know that in so many ways that delayed some things, and yet it also opened up many new opportunities for us in the Mission Center. I want to say how proud I am that this Mission Center is taking the lead on what I believe to be the #1 global challenge we face, which is climate change. And so it's the North American Climate Justice Team. If you are serving on that team in this Mission Center, would you stand up? Susan Oxley is the lead. Susan, we are so proud of the work you and the team are doing. I deeply believe that that global issue frames all the other global issues that are before us as a denomination, as disciples in the world today. I also want to end by just sharing my unwavering testimony that amid all the challenges, I have sensed the presence of the Spirit among us in powerful ways, encouraging, disrupting, and nudging us forward with a vision of a more just and peaceful world. It is a vision where we don't just speak and sing of Zion, but live, love, and share as Zion, where there are no poor or oppressed. Friends, that is why I am in this movement. That is what keeps me up at night, thinking about the possibilities of what could be in our world. May the Spirit continue to bless us with strength, especially courage and vision this weekend and for the journey ahead.
At the still point of the circle, round whom all creation turns, nothing lost and held together in God's gracious heart. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song, no one stands alone. Side by side, draw the circle wide. Let our hearts touch far horizons, so encompass great and small. Let our loving know we've rooted, faithful to God's call. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song, no one stands alone. Side by side, draw the circle wide. Let the dream we dream be larger than we ever dreamed before. Let the dream of Christ be in us, open every door. Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song, no one stands alone. Side by side, draw the circle wide.
One just short special prepare for Kathy, because she's been tasked with keeping these two now. Also going rogue with Donald and Sean. Kim says it's a circus. Join me in the invocation, please. Creator God, thank you today for the privilege of gathering as a Mission Center body. We gratefully acknowledge the land that we are on, its original caretakers, the local and indigenous peoples, both past and present. We have shown up for this weekend with glad hearts to listen and to learn, to create space for and lean into critical conversations. We pray that the door is open for self-reflection, that we each contribute our best talents as decisions are made and business is conducted this weekend. Lord, help us to center those who are not represented, that we answer the invitation to welcome growth, experience discomfort in our lives, and celebrate the opportunity for courageous and transformative experience. Amen.
Thanks, Cliff and Wanda and Lisa, for sharing. So just a few reminders. Oh, one reminder, Ron Harmon is actually scheduled to be our guest minister at Samish Family Reunion next summer. So you cannot back out just because. So if you really feel like you need to see Ron again within the year, that's where he'll be. A few delegate reminders. If you're a delegate, a voting delegate, you should have a badge, a name badge with a blue ribbon that says delegate on it. Obviously, you can all sit together. We don't separate delegates from non-delegates any longer. And Robert has entered the room. So the rules of order will be in process, and our Kathy Sharp is back here to make sure that Robert's rules are being followed. So just be aware of that. We have summaries of some of the parliamentary procedures on page 10 and 11 if you get bored and would like to read that instead of listening to me. Any questions that arise, Kathy will take care of it and guide us, right? Sure, she has a book. If during the deliberations, if you wish to make a motion or speak to a motion on the floor, please make your way to one of the aisle mics here or raise your hand so that whoever is presiding can see, and we'll have a mic brought to you. And seconds to motions can just be made from your seats. When one of us calls for a second, you can just raise your hand and we'll see that it's been seconded. All right, at this time, I would call your attention to the minutes of the 2021 Annual Mission Center Conference found on pages 28 through 32 of your conference bulletin. It is the decision of the chair to dispense with the reading of these minutes as they have been printed in your conference packets. Are there any objections to that? Seeing none, the chair will now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the 2021 Annual Mission Center Conference as found in your bulletin. Please move to a microphone and state your name and congregation.
Susan Gregory, Band Congregation. I make the motion that we accept the minutes.
Thank you. Susan Gregory has made the motion. Do I see a second? I see a number of seconds. Has anyone identified any corrections that need to be made to said minutes? Seeing none, I will move us to a vote, and those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes as presented, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you. Our theme for this session is Courage to Kneel. How do we serve and embody the body of Christ? We are sitting here today surrounded by examples and stories that would answer that question. So where do I even start? 3 years ago, our theme was Courage to Risk, followed a year later by Claiming Our Prophetic Voice. And both of these themes provide context for where we find ourselves today. I recall that at various times in both written and spoken messages over the last nearly 6 years, I have tried to plant the idea that being the church is far different than going to church. That the church is not a building, but a community. That clinging to traditional formats and structures may not be the sustainable path into the future. I think by now we are all well aware that the Christian church as a whole is struggling to be a relevant institution, as the statistics prove that people are searching for something more than once a week, hour-long worship experiences, or in some cases, performances. People are longing for spiritual connection, meaningful relationships, and a sense of belonging, of community. So that question, how do we serve and embody the body of Christ, might be rephrased as how do we meet people where they are, provide safe space for community and spiritual connection, and nurture relationships with one another as well as with Jesus Christ. That kind of thinking requires courage. It requires discernment. It requires focusing more on serving others than satisfying our tendency and even desire to stay inside the walls of our buildings and sing a few hymns and hear a sermon. I recently read a Facebook post by John Hamer of the Toronto congregation, who many of you know. And if you know John, you understand that he is always thinking about and exploring our spiritual life and community beyond the walls. He's given me permission to share this story, and I share it because as we contemplate courageous ways to envision the future, I think it's important to share valuable lessons from our past. These are John's words. Visiting Tintern Abbey in Wales, it was amazing to walk about the sacred space of these ruins, and it caused me to reflect on transformational crises of the past and the present. Women and men who took special vows to devote their entire lives to living apart in sacred community in monastic orders were the focus of Christianity in the West for 1,000 years. The monks, nuns, and friars devoted themselves to God as spiritual intercessors for the community at large, which had to continue to focus on worldly concerns. This is similar to the way Buddhist communities are centered on and support monks and nuns to this day. All that changed in Great Britain in 1536 when King Henry VIII suppressed the monasteries and confiscated their property. This caused the destruction of centuries-old institutions, including a vast proportion of the country's libraries and archives, which the monasteries had created and housed. Some kind of reform was needed, as few of the monastic institutions were keeping to their primary purpose. Rather than living austere lives, many of the monks and nuns lived worldly and lavish lifestyles. This moment in history, the Protestant Reformation, is when the focus of Christianity shifted from altar to pulpit, from rituals to sermons, a focus that many lifelong Christians today imagine has always been the sine qua non, or something absolutely indispensable and essential of the faith. Fast forward half a millennium as this new tradition of the 11 o'clock Sunday service focused on a sermon has ceased to be meaningful and relevant in most people's lives in the West in the 21st century. Churches are again at a crisis moment similar to that which occurred in the 16th century. Christianity will ultimately evolve to meet the new environmental conditions. The question is, which individual expressions and denominations can adapt and which will end up as part of a historic legacy like the ruins of Tintern Abbey? In this context, then, perhaps courage, more specifically, courage to serve and embody the body of Christ, might be described as a willingness to imagine, explore, and experiment with how we live into our prophetic calling to be a global community of disciples focused on living Christ's mission on earth. In other words, how we take the good news of the gospel beyond the walls, to borrow a phrase. Many of our congregations have done some experimenting with new and innovative forms of worship and expressions of their spiritual community in the last couple of years, largely as a response to the pandemic and closing of our buildings. We've had to find new ways to worship, to be, and in some cases, even as we've begun coming back together in person, we've realized that we've seen value in continuing to do things just a little bit differently than we did BP, before pandemic. In other cases, ideas and imaginings had been planted and nurtured since well before we closed the doors of our gathering places. And now that we are returning to some stable footing, some of our leaders are taking steps to implement those ideas and experiments. I'd like to share a few courageous journeys currently taking place in our mission center. As many of you are aware, in the spring of 2021, 3 congregations in the Seattle area, Woodland Park, Crystal Springs, and Renton decided to try something new together. Since we were about a year into the pandemic and congregations being closed, they decided to come together in shared worship experiences through Zoom. Soon after, the Rainier Valley congregation joined in, and this coincided nicely with the Mission Center worships moving to evenings. While the 4 congregations have continued to share in worships, both on Zoom and in person, it's important to note that Crystal Springs and Woodland Park leaders had actually begun talking about occasionally sharing services, space, and special events well before the pandemic. So it was a natural progression of that conversation when they began talking more intentionally about what a shared future might look like. These 2 congregations are looking to a future that brings the 2 communities together in a new way, not blending or merging, not one closing and being folded into the other, but courageously exploring what the possibilities might be for a shared future. Now, historically, these 2 congregations have had very different personalities, worship styles, even theologies. But as they are spending more time getting to know one another, leaning into the discomfort of unfamiliarity, they are finding more in common, but also seeing the blessings of their differences. They recently held a joint retreat at Samish Island, during which several members of each congregation shared their feelings of acceptance and welcome, and the sense that something new is forming. They have 2 such retreats already planned for next year, and I'm excited and inspired by the visionary leadership in each group that embraces this notion that we are called into relationship with one another and are challenged to explore and experiment with building sacred community, even when we don't have a clear vision of what that future might hold. As has been discussed earlier today, in which many of you are aware, the Bend congregation has been part of a large consortium of adjacent property owners working together for several years now to sell a large parcel of land to potential developers. That sale should close this summer, as Donald mentioned, and through a long process of discernment, conversation, dreaming, and praying, the congregation has shared their vision for engaging with others in the community in providing services and opportunities for physical and spiritual wholeness and connection with others in the Central Oregon area. Their vision and sense of calling in their community is a reflection of an understanding that we are called to be messengers and examples of God's shalom in all its expressions. We don't know exactly what this vision and calling will ultimately look like, but that doesn't stop a prophetic people from pursuing God's peaceful kingdom and striving to build communities of joy, hope, love, and peace. Yakima Valley has experienced over the last several years what many of our congregations are currently experiencing: an aging membership, navigating the challenges of mobility, energy, maintaining a building that has likely outlived its design and functionality. While the current building was in the past home to a large and active congregation, including generations of families, children, and outreach ministries, it is now a building that doesn't quite meet the needs of the current members. In a bold and courageous move, the congregation recently voted to sell the building, recognizing that being a community of disciples doesn't require owning a building that in many ways has become a burden. This is a congregation that has known struggle, loss, and sorrow, but has also stuck together through those challenges and has a deep desire to remain in community with one another. They are willing to see where God might be calling them in a new neighborhood, released from the financial and physical burdens of maintaining a building that simply has come to the close of its purpose. A smaller, more accessible rental space has been secured, and the members in Yakima and Sela area are looking forward to moving in early February of 2023. The opportunities that may arise in their new space are as yet unknown, but I am appreciative of and hopeful for this community of disciples as they continue to discern a future in a new space, seeking pathways to serving their neighborhood as they provide a spiritual home for those who have served and worshiped together for many decades. Are you seeing a theme here? Exploration, imagination, experimentation, risk, venturing into an unknown future, courage. In each of these stories and in others that many of you are experiencing, Disciples are discerning a call to be something more than a building in the neighborhood, waiting for people to come through the doors, but instead venturing into new and unfamiliar territory, untested waters, and uncertain outcomes. And we have learned from our past experiences of faithful journeying into the future that our willingness to risk something new, to experiment, virtually always opens new doors to our understanding of discipleship. And that takes courage, my friends. Courage to be uncomfortable, to let go of what simply isn't working in order to grasp onto something that might or might not work. It takes courage to try something new and to sometimes admit that the new thing didn't quite go as expected. It takes courage to keep trying, making adjustments as we go, because all the while we're learning and faithfully responding to that call. A few weeks ago, Emily Rose, Ron's daughter-in-law and Daniel Rose's sister, and a dear friend of mine provided guest ministry for our evening community connections worship on the theme Pursue Peace, which was part of our series on the 5 mission initiatives. She shared some thoughts that literally rang in my ears as I scrambled to jot them down. Fortunately, through the magic of modern technology, I was able to watch the recording of her message to make sure I got the quote right, and she's given me permission to share it with you today. 2 comments from her stood out. Instead of trying to save our congregations, what if we tried saving the world? Well, that grabbed my attention, and I hope it grabs yours. She also said, tinkering with our worships and hoping that young families will magically show up to help us maintain the status quo is not the work of God, the work that God is calling us to do. We pursue peace when we move past the self-preservation of our congregations and toward the preservation of the hungry and isolated and abused. We pursue peace when we stop clinging so tightly to our buildings and we start clinging tightly to the earth groaning beneath our feet. I am not sure I could add anything to that other than to say that doing what Emily suggests does take courage. And I believe that we are a courageous people. At this time, I'd like to take just a minute to pause and acknowledge those whom we've lost over the past year. There may be others not listed here, and we include them in our moment of silent respect. At this time, I'd like to share news about our staff and volunteer transitions. Over the course of the year and for a variety of reasons, a number of our volunteers and self-sustaining ministers have stepped down from their roles, and I'd like to take a minute to express my thanks for their service. Please hold your applause until all of the names have been read. Cluster support ministers Anita Mortimer, David Pauley, Margaret Pauley, Tammy Dean, Christy Ostendorp, David Grable, and Elizabeth Else. Lewis River Campground caretakers Karen and Les Sundstrom. Samish Island Campground board members Larry Dobson and Christine Campbell. Camp Remote board member and treasurer Bev Burke. And Mission Center council members Doug Brown, Jan Glass, Dan Jackson, and Carolyn Sharp. To all of you, please accept our gratitude for your work and your service to the Mission Center. Thank you. So, while we're expressing our gratitude for those stepping down from various volunteer roles in the Mission Center, it is with a whole bag of mixed emotions that I'm going to ask Sean to join me up here. He says he's dreading it, but you know, Sean, come on. As I'm sure you're all aware, Sean has recently accepted the invitation to serve as Mission Center President for the Rocky Mountain Mission Center, serving Colorado and parts of Wyoming and New Mexico and Nebraska and Kansas, evidently. I'm glad you know that. Just a week ago, Sean was set apart and will begin this new chapter of his ministry in January. Sean joined the GPNW staff as the self-sustaining young adult ministry specialist in the summer of 2010. By January of 2012, he was a part-time employee serving as the director of youth camping. He took on many hats over the next few years until he was ultimately a full-time employee, serving as Mission Center Invitation Support Minister and still in charge of youth and young adult ministries as well as the camping program. I've had the privilege of working with Sean for most of those 12 years, but also knowing him since he was a wee tyke running around the Samish Island campground. Aww. I grew up with his mom, Leanne, so it's been an interesting relationship over the years, but one I've come to cherish and value. I no longer see him as that young adult maverick with wild outside the box ideas. I see him as my peer, my right hand, my sounding board. And I know many, if not most of you, have seen him in this light as well. It has been my honor to witness Sean's faith journey, lived openly and freely, and watch his ministry expand far beyond the borders of this mission center. Sean has shared his gifts with us generously and vulnerably, and we are better people for it. I'm told that the measure of success of a leader is when those you lead become leaders themselves. So if that's the case, then apparently I've been successful. I could not be more proud of Sean as a longtime staff member, a valued member of our leadership team, and most importantly, as a friend. We celebrate your new venture, my friend, even as we wave farewell. You know that we will always claim you as ours and look forward to inviting you back to visit whenever possible. I feel rather like a mother hen watching one of her chicks fly the coop, but I look forward to serving with you as a fellow Mission Center president. And with that, all of this happened very fast, and so we probably will have something more grand to present you with later, but I want to present you with this little token of our affection, and you can open it if you like. I also want to be sure, I mean, it's nothing. It's nothing really. No, that came out wrong. That sounded better in my head.
But the bag is better than the gift.
No, it is a gift. What I want to say, please watch for more information. On Sunday, December 4th, there will be a farewell reception for Sean at the Southridge congregation from 2 to 5 in the afternoon, and we will celebrate him again and some more. And this is just a little puzzle of the Rocky Mountains for him to. Oh, and in perfect Sean form, he would like to take a selfie.
I thought that Ron was going to steal my thunder a few moments ago, but
Where's your selfie stick?
it's right here. So, we need to take a picture of all of us.
How are we gonna, do these guys need to go down?
I think what I'm going to do is do the same thing. So, we're going to have a 3-second timer, so you time to repair whatever you need to do first, people. Okay, so do this side, 2 seconds first. Okay, we're going over here. Y'all ready? Your hair. Jesus. Just stand. Yeah, just do this. They can wait. There we go.
Okay, it's done. It is done. So I know that all of you will want a chance to wish Sean well and see him if you can before he takes off for the Rocky Mountains. And they will be lucky to have him. Finally, I know everyone looks forward to that word from me. Finally, we welcome a number of new volunteers to various roles in the Mission Center. Cluster support ministers Kay Fletcher and Mike Bessonette, who stepped off and then stepped back on, supporting Cluster 2 in the Southern and Central Oregon area, Dean White and Greg Williams to the Samish Island Campground Board, Christine Campbell as the new camp manager for the Samish Island Campground, and Jessica Pisior and Braden Austin as the new Lewis River Campground caretakers, Brody Sargent to the Lewis River Campground Board, Janice Brew to the Camp Remote Board, as well as Nicholas White, Sonia Ickes, and Maria Kazee as new Mission Center Council members. We look forward to the contributions each of these individuals will surely bring to the Mission Center. For more news about what's been happening in the Mission Center for this past year, I would refer you to my written President's Report beginning at page 33. And please be sure also to read the numerous written reports from various different groups on pages 43 through 74. And I will now yield the chair to Donald Welch for acceptance of the 2021 financial inspection report.
Kim, are you sure you don't want to first read pages 47 through 74? Okay. This time I'm just asking you to turn your attention to the financial reports that I mentioned earlier during the delegate orientation session. They're found on pages 13 through 20 of your Saturday packet. That's where you'll find the reports. In particular, the most important one that I want you just to look at is on page 15. It is the audited balance sheet for 2021. It's the best place to look for a snapshot of GPNW's financial health. I'll just give you a minute to look at it. It's the second column of the report on page 15. And now I'd like for you to turn to page 21, where you will find the 2021 Report of Financial Inspection, which is previously known as the Auditor's Report. There's a section in my reports about why the name has changed. I'll let you read that on your own. I'm going to go ahead and read page 21. And then after I'm done reading it, I'm going to ask for a motion from the conference floor to accept the letter into the minutes of our meeting today. Internal financial statement and procedures inspection report, Mission Center Presidency and Conference, GPNW USA Mission Center, Community of Christ. The financial records of the Greater Pacific Northwest USA Mission Center for the year ending December 31st, 2021 have been inspected, applying certain procedures as described below, the purpose of which is to assist in evaluating the effectiveness of the internal controls and in identifying any areas in which the accounting functions might not have captured all the significant financial data. Additionally, these procedures are intended to meet the, quote, audit function by the presiding bishopric policies. This report is intended solely for use of members of the Greater Pacific Northwest USA Mission Center and the World Church Presiding Bishopric, and it should not be distributed to anyone who is not associated through these bodies. We are required to be independent of the Greater Pacific Northwest USA Mission Center and to meet other ethical responsibilities related to this inspection. Among the procedures conducted were the following: 1, confirmation of cash balances and investment balances; 2, inspection of all assets, liabilities, and equity accounts as recorded in the general ledger; 3, traced transactions through the year pertaining to cash receipts, disbursements, and journal entries, including examination of appropriate supporting documentation. In all material respects, receipts and disbursements have been recorded and administered in accordance with appropriate accounting practices and approved budgets with no material misstatements noted. The accompanying statement presents fairly the agreed upon financial procedures inspected and the results of its operations and changes to the fund balances of the Greater Pacific Northwest USA Mission Center as of December 31st, 2021, submitted. William E. McFarland. Is there someone who would make a motion to have this document accepted into the minutes of today's meeting? Please move to a microphone if there is. We can't skip it.
Lynn Sharp, Crystal Springs, I move that we accept this inspection report.
Thank you, Lynn. Do we have a second? Thank you. All in favor of accepting these into today's minutes, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. The motion passes, and I will now relinquish the chair to Ron Harmon. Would you rather introduce him? Okay.
So at this time, I would like to receive a motion to consider the sustaining of Mission Center officers for 2023. Somebody be willing to make a motion to that regard?
I so move. Bob Dopkins from Eugene Congregation in the back.
Thank you, Bob. And a second? Thank you. We have a second. I was going to do this before I got up here. I was going to refer you to the pages that those letters are on. Page 37. Is that right? Yeah. Yes, page 37, also page 38. We'll take the Mission Center president first, Kim Naten. And I just want to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to Kim for her continued leadership and ministry, and probably most importantly, the love that she shows for the people of this Mission Center. And it has been a privilege to work with her over the last several years. That is a relationship I will miss. Not completely. Well, of course we can. Of course we can. So it'll be a little different relationship. These last couple of years have been very challenging years to serve particularly in any position of leadership, particularly Mission Center president. And I'm just very grateful for the leadership that she has offered, and just wanted to have an opportunity to express that. So if there is no other discussion on the floor before we move to a vote to sustain, is there? Did I miss something? Was somebody going? Oh, Rick, were you going to say something?
No, I don't wish to say something. I wish to move the sustaining.
I was going to say, there was just a moment there. I looked at Kim and she was like, what's going on here?
Although Bill was right. I could actually object to it too at some point, couldn't I?
All right, so not seeing anybody else seeking the floor for discussion, I will ask those who are willing to sustain Kim Naten as Mission Center president for 2023. Please indicate by tugging on your left ear. Thank you. Those who are opposed, the same sign. Rick, I saw that. Yeah, and anybody that would wish to abstain as well, we should provide that option. All right, thank you. It looks like I checked all the ears that were tugging, and I think you're a shoe-in, so for another year. All right, again, I just refer you to page 38 for the letter with respect to Donald's appointment, and One of the wonderful things in working with a Mission Center financial officer is that unfortunately, when things are going really, really well, there really isn't any fanfare. Things just happen the way they're supposed to happen. Bills get paid, things get taken care of, buildings get sold, building improvements are all taken care of the way that they're supposed to happen. Payroll happens, all that stuff happens, and everybody's happy until you have a Mission Center financial officer that doesn't carry out those responsibilities effectively. And then all of a sudden, folks know about it. So I just want to express my appreciation to Donald for the very competent and very conscientious way that he executes his responsibilities as Mission Center financial officer. But also, there's something else that I really appreciate about Donald, and that is that it's not just about the numbers for Donald. Donald is very concerned and focused on how we're using our assets to best support mission in this Mission Center. And I really appreciate that focus and the way that he approaches his role as Mission Center financial officer. And I can say this to Donald, I look forward, where is there? I look forward to the new relationship we'll have, right? So you're not gonna be rid of me. We're still gonna be working together. All right. Is there any other discussion on this before we? Yes.
I'm sorry, I was ready to move. We sustain his
Thank you.
appointment.
Thank you
Bill
very
Campbell
much.
from Auburn.
Thank you very much. All right. So those who would sustain. Oh, we do. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We need a second. See? We have a second. All right. Those who would sustain Donald Welch as Mission Center Financial Officer for 2023, please indicate your support by raising your hand. Thank you. Opposed, the same sign. Anybody that wishes to abstain? Thank you. I'll turn the chair back over to Kim.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you for your support on behalf of Donald and myself. At this time, I would entertain a motion to sustain Jill Brunette as the Mission Center Recorder. So if you would like to make that motion, please move to a mic or raise your hand. All right. Mike, is it Susan?
Susan Oxley from the Renton Congregation. I move to sustain Jill as the recorder. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And is there a second? Thank you. All those who would sustain Jill in her role as Mission Center Recorder, please do so, show your support by raising your right hand. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstained? Thank you. The motion passes. And Jill, you're in it for another year. Thank you. At this time, I would yield the chair to Donald Welch for sustaining of our Mission Center Council as listed in your bulletin.
Thank you once again, Kim. The Mission Center Council serves as an advisory board to the Mission Center leadership team on matters affecting care and core functions of the Mission Center. The following names are submitted for consideration and approval for 2023, and you'll find their names listed on page 25. Additionally, as I say their names, if they are present, I would appreciate it if they would stand up so that each one of you can see who these people are. The first is Laura Eastham, Lisa Meath, Nicholas White, who's not present today, Tom Weber. I see the council's all sitting together today. Brenda Sargent, back. Sonia Ickes, I don't believe Sonia is here today. Maria Kazee, they are all sitting together. And Christina Kras, who is also not present today. Thank you. You can all sit down. So I need a motion, correct? Okay. Can I receive a motion to sustain this list of names for Mission Center Council? Please find a microphone and state your name.
Susan Gregory, the Bend Community, and I make that motion.
Thank you, Susan. Is there a second? Many, many seconds. All of those in favor of sustaining this list of individuals, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Any abstained, raise your hands. All right, with thanks, I'd like to recognize Jan Glass, Dan Jackson, Doug Brown, and Carolyn Sharp as they step down at the end of the year from the council for their many years of service. And now I will relinquish the chair to Sean Langdon.
The youth camping team serves in an advisory capacity to the camping ministries director and consists of 4 representatives from each of our 3 campground areas, with 1 person from each area serving as the team lead for that area. The Samish Island has representation also from Canada West as part of their team due to our shared relationship with youth camping at Samish Island. The duties of the team are listed on page 25 in your conference program. Looking at page 25 and onto 26, you will find the names of those submitted for the consideration and approval to serve on the youth camping team in 2023. I do want to note, though, that one individual, Jason Kazee, is transitioning off the team at the end of the year. I am grateful for the excitement, dedication, and passion that he brought to our team during his time of service. Thank you, Jason. Now, to help us put a face with the name of those present, I'm going to ask the members of the 2023 youth camping team to stand when your name is called, and then to stay standing until all have been called. For Lewis River, Emily Hill. Our Lewis River lead and a new member to the team, Travis Reese. Lewis River, Sharon West. Lewis River, Jeff Weaver. Our remote lead, Jody Barnhart. Also from remote, Katie O'Keefe Knoble. Remote, Chris Simonson. Remote, Eric Blickenstaff. And our Samish Island lead, Laura Fish. And also serving for Samish Island, Rick Naten and Sarah Cravey, and then Chris Phelps as well. The representatives of the youth camping team are appointed by the camping ministries director in consultation with the commission center president, and therefore require a sustaining vote. You may be seated. Thank you. Is there a motion to sustain these names to collectively serve as the youth camping team for 2023? Please move to a mic if you would like to make that motion.
Bob Dopkins from Eugene, Oregon. I move to sustain them as a group.
Thank you, Bob. Is there a second? There is. Okay, so we are ready to vote then. You are in favor of the motion to sustain the youth camping team as printed. Please raise your right hand. Thank you. Opposed, same sign. And abstained, same sign. The 2023 youth camping team is sustained. Thank you. The next item for our agenda this afternoon is the recognition of camp director transitions, which are found on page 26 of your conference packet as well. At this time, I would especially like to acknowledge those who are stepping down from a director role capacity, as well as those who have responded affirmatively to the invitation to take on a directing role since our last conference. You are present when I read your name. Please stand and stay standing until I invite you to sit again. Tara Weigel, co-director, Senior High Camp at Remote. Jody Barnhart, co-director, Caravan. Troy Barnhart, co-director, Caravan. Ashley Whittam, co-director, Family Reunion at Lewis River. Jason Kazee, co-director, Senior High Retreat at Lewis River. And some guy named Sean, director of Kimtaw at Samish. Joining them in standing are incoming directors that are being added for the new year are Nicholas White, co-director, Senior High Camp at Remote. Natalie White, Co-Director, Senior High Camp at Remote. Brenda Sargent, Co-Director, Family Reunion at Lewis River. Sonia Ickes, Director Team, Family Reunion at Remote. Janice Grew, Director Team, Family Reunion at Remote. Kim Lawrence, Director Team, Family Reunion at Remote. Dave Mahi, Director, Kim Ta at Samish. Tamara Benedict, Co-Director, Senior High Youth Retreat at Lewis River. Mike Jaycox, Director of Caravan. Kato Keep Knoble, Assistant Director for Caravan. Nicholas Kraz, Co-Director, Kids Camp at Remote. We have a lot of new people coming to serve. Now, while you are standing, I would like to invite anyone present who directs a youth camp, reunion, Northwest Spec, Caravan, or youth retreat in the Mission Center to please stand at this time. Please join them in standing. And let us express our gratitude for the work that they are doing. You may be seated. And I'm not only grateful for our directors, but all who staff our reunions and youth camps. These events are not only possible because you say yes. They are only possible because you say yes. My last time, fire me if you want to. Now, please remember that as well, as we look towards the 2023 camping season, we need your help to staff, to invite, and to promote. If I'm to be honest, decisions are having to be made because we don't have volunteers coming forward to help staff and lead our camps and reunions like we used to. And we don't have as many people coming. So please, anyone who is passionate about this ministry, please do what you can this next year to help us with that. Now, I want at this time recognize two people in this room. Jody and Troy, would you please come forward? You can come up here if you want to, sure, that's fine. Oh yeah, actually that's true. You were on Zoom now too, there we go. After many years of service, both on staff and directors, Jody and Troy have passed on the baton to new directors this next year. We of course recognize all who serve, but there are some who go above and beyond and serve a long period of time. And honestly, we are grateful because it's hard to find people to serve in these capacities. As a mission center, we are so grateful for your dedication to developing disciples to serve and inviting our youth to make mission real in their lives and in their community, both near and far. Many lives have been impacted because of your service. And now let us just see who those lives are. I'm going to name various groups of people. If this applies to you, please stand and stay standing until the end, because we like doing that at Mission Center Conference. Or you can wave as well if you're not able to, or just would rather stay seated, that's fine. If you are not able to stand, I just said that. Okay, during Jody and Troy's time as staff and or directors for Caravan, please stand if you were ever a youth who attended Caravan, their leadership. For Caravan under their leadership. If you staffed Caravan with them, either you're on their staff, or you staffed it with them when they were staffing, please stand and stay standing. If you ever had a child or grandchild participate in Caravan under their leadership, please stand and join the others. If you ever participated in one of the Caravan actions by either donating, purchasing, or attending, please stand at this time. And if you saw one of the Caravan programs at a huddle or on the trip under their leadership, please stand at this time. Look around. This is just a small fraction of the lives you have touched because you said yes. You all may be seated. Growing up during moments of honoring and celebration like this, I remember my mom often being asked to sing a Ray Boltz song with lyrics that went like this. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave. And Jody and Troy, so many lives have been changed because of your service. And we are so glad you gave. I will now invite Kim to offer some remarks as well.
I have always been aware of Caravan as sort of a Southern Oregon thing, and I knew it existed. But until I was invited to serve on staff for the 2019 Caravan and spent time in retreat with the staff in October of 2018, and then began ascending huddles in early 2019, I came to realize that these two individuals are gifted and bless us in ways I had no idea. The moving parts in putting together a caravan program that travels all over is phenomenal and indescribable. The amount of patience that it takes to herd cats, and I'm talking about teenage cats, and I'm talking about 60-year-old cats. All of the cats, they herd them marvelously and with love and compassion. I was able to travel with Caravan in 2019, and then pandemic happened. And this last year I was able to travel with Caravan again in this past year. And I have seen the behind the scenes that most of you don't see. And many of you staff members have seen it as well. The things that happen that don't go quite as they were supposed to. The difficulties that occur just because we're all human. These two handle those with such tenderness and care and compassion and make difficult decisions that most of us never see. And I have been humbled to be part of your staff and to serve under your leadership and to call you my friends, my dear, dear friends. So thank you so much for all that you've done. Should I? And well, they've been directors for 25 years, yeah? I'm not worried about that. How long have you been involved in the Caravan program total? So you do the math, Karin, because a lot of years, 40? 33 years they've been involved in the Caravan program.
Not a puzzle, I'll tell you that.
In case you don't know, we went to Hawaii and Troy loves turtles. Oh.
Lyle? Correct that, yep.
Just a little history. Donald was our first caravaner. And he was good. He did a good job. So I was very excited when he was becoming our Mission Center financial officer. I was one of the first that was.
With that, I now yield the chair back to Donald Welch for consideration of the 2023 budget.
It's true. I was here in 2019. I had already applied for this job, and Jody comes up to me and says, "Have you considered applying for Mission Center Financial Officer?" So thank you. For consideration of the 2023 budget, I ask that you consult page 19 of your conference bulletin. I've already gone over the key points of departure from 2022 during the conference orientation session. So at this time, the chair recognizes Tom Weber to make a motion. Tom.
Tom Weber from Samish. I move that we accept the 2023 operating missional budget as presented on page 19.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have a second? It has a second. Tom, would you like to speak to it?
Why do I love this missional budget? Don asked me to tell you why I love this budget. That's the truth. I would like to, aside from all the numbers and the stuff Donald has pointed out, what can I say about this budget that hasn't already been expressed? Not much. No one has come forward and said, Donald, what about this and what about that? That wasn't easily answered. There are no surprises. But the biggest thing I like about this budget is we're finally going toward our generosity of giving instead of saying each congregation must pay so much. That's the old tithing way of a former church. I would like to read from 163, Doctrine and Covenants 163 in that regard. Section number 9. Faithful disciples respond to an increasing awareness of the abundant generosity of God by sharing according to the desires of their hearts, not by commandment or constraint. Break free of the shackles of conventional culture that mainly promote self-serving interests. Give generously according to your true capacity. And that's what I see in this budget and the graphs and the numbers. And I hear the response that Donald has told us that we are giving him. And I hear this being fulfilled today.
Thank you, Tom. It is now appropriate if you have any amendments, if you would like to speak to or against the budget, to seek a microphone, if there are any. That's all the time I'm going to give you. All those in favor of adopting the 2023 budget as printed, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstain, please raise your hands. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for keeping the Mission Center accountable for its spending. I appreciate every one of you. And now, unless Kim would like the floor, I'm going to announce a 15-minute recess, which according to the big clock on the back wall means we should be back in our seats at 3:40. You are dismissed. Kim, oh.
Well, congratulations again, Sean. Yeah. And I want to talk to you a little bit about this, that field guide for small groups. Is that what that was?
Yeah.
And this relates to the missional living.
The mission prayer. Living the rhythm of mission prayer.
And the what the
Oh, yeah.
video that's on there with you
Yes.
and Chandra
Yeah.
and that whole thing.
Yeah. It's on there. You can actually download it for free.
The field guide is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's also there's a few hard copies of it as well. So like if you want to, suppose one Sunday come up this weekend, Kim can let me know and we can get some.
How's it different from our other field guy?
Well, the whole focus of it is on awakened risk awareness. How do you live that out as individuals? So practices in there. Small groups can do. Actually, a small group could literally start from the beginning of it. Questions at the end of each section. You can decide, hey, let's just study this.
Yeah.
You can take a lot of preparation because it's all there. Questions are there. Everything's there. Matter of fact, here, I'll show you.
Their seats so that we can move into the final phase of our business session this afternoon. Please take your seats so that we can begin our final session.
I've walked by.
Okay.
Welcome back. I would like to call the meeting back to order at this time. So if you're still standing and visiting, I would invite you to take your seats. All right. At this time, we will consider the nominations to, as delegates for World Conference. As indicated this morning, we had a sign-up sheet out on the table, and we have added a number of names to the roster of nominees for World Conference. And at this point, because two of those on our ballot had actually requested to serve as alternates, we currently stand at 75. Is that correct? 75. And we have an allotment of 79. Yes. So as promised, I will one last time ask if there are any nominees from the floor to serve as a delegate for Mission World Conference in 2023. Are there any additional nominees? Seeing none. Right. We can give that to you, but if we are under 79, then they will all be appointed and we will share those names in news briefs. Pardon? David, can you give her a?
My point of order was that we wouldn't know who else to nominate if we don't know.
We
who's on the
prefer
list.
people self-nominate rather than nominate others. If you nominate someone else that you haven't spoken with yet to see if they wish to serve, that can be complicated. There is a list, there is a stack of ballots available, and David has them. We can certainly pass them out so you can see who is on the ballot, and I can read the names of those who have added their names, if that's preferable. So could the ushers pass the ballots out to the body, please? Thank you. Those will be handed out. Would you raise your hand if you still need a ballot, please, so that the ushers can see who needs one? And continue holding your hands up until you receive your ballot. The back corner needs some ballots. Okay. You forgot? Okay. Does everyone who needs a ballot have a ballot at this time? Okay. Okay, I'll make that note. Thank you. All right, if you will look at your ballot, the printed ballot, a couple of corrections to make. Number 10, Bill Campbell is listed as Renton. He is a member of the Auburn congregation. I would also bring your attention to nominees Lowell and Netta Grote. actually had requested to be listed as alternates only. So they will not be nominees as delegates on this, and therefore we still, that would be two less of the 79 that we are allotted. So please remove Lowell and Netagrote from the ballot as delegates. They would prefer to serve as alternates only if that is necessary. I will read the names that have been added to the ballot. If you would like to write them in, you may. We are still, however, at this time under 79, and I will, following the reading of these names, I will ask for one last call. You may add Leah Isaac, ISAAK, from the Portland congregation. Lyle Anderson II from Tualatin. Daniel Anderson from Tualatin. And remember that only delegates to Mission Center Conference are voting at this time on the ballots. Lyle Anderson, Daniel Anderson, Teresa Anderson, also from Tualatin. Susan Gregory from Bend. Rich Sowers from University Place. Leanne Sowers from University Place. Margaret Polly from Salem. David Polly, also from Salem. Leonard Warnock from Crystal Springs. Sharon Kliegel, Kliegl, from Woodland Park. Barry Lewis from Crystal Springs. Ron Raines, Raynes, from Eugene. Eugene. Sue Raines, also from Eugene. Bernadine Lee, who I believe is from Portland. It's not on here, but can someone confirm? Yes. Bernadine Lee from Portland. Jennifer Redfern from Puyallup. Dorothy Wilgus, also from Puyallup. Wilgus, Wilgus. Barbara Krask from Mossy Rock. Les Sundstrom from Garden Grove. Karen Sundstrom, also from Garden Grove. Tom Weber from Samish. And Susan Weber, also from Samish. Are there any other nominations from the floor at this time? Jan. Jan Trezil. Jan, is it TZ or TRZ? TRZIL. Jan, TRZ, Trezil. And you're from Portland? From Portland. Lynn? Absolutely. Lynn Sharp would add his name as an alternate along with Lowell and Netta Grote. So that will not be included in the count of 79 at this time. But my guess is that you'll be called. Lynn Sharp is from Crystal Springs. That was Lynn offered his name as an alternate. Any other nominations for delegates? Having received all nominations for World Conference delegates from the floor and through Zoom and previous emails, we now stand at 78 78 nominations for an allotment of 79 total delegates. Since the number of nominees is less than the number of delegates we are allotted, if there is no objection from the body, I will declare all nominees elected. Are there any objections? Mission Center presidents do have the authority to appoint additional delegates if more people come forward offering to serve. We will also seek to find alternates who are ready to serve if any of those already elected are unable to serve. So thank you so much for your patience in this process. All names appearing on your ballot have now been elected and or appointed, I suppose appointed, to serve as World Conference delegates. We know from past experience that between now and April, life happens. A number of our delegates will likely have to withdraw. A number of folks who may not have offered their names up will decide they wish to attend. And so by the time we get closer to April and leaving for conference, we may have other names on our roster of delegates for our delegation. But I am grateful to all of you who are willing to serve in that capacity. And if you should decide later to offer up your name as an alternate, I will happily take those names. And I think it's, I don't have a, oh, I do have a clicker. Did it? I broke it? Oh, look at that. Thank you again. At this time, I'll invite Ashley up to offer a moment of blessing for us.
Hi, everybody. How have you moved through your life as a disciple? This weekend's theme is courage, but they all have different actions paired with courage, because the courage of a disciple inspires us to move. So as we pause this afternoon, I'll invite you to reflect on your life as a disciple of Christ and the rhythm this has created within you. Now, at some point, you had the courage to step forward. Your heart was open, your thoughts connected with ideas and a holy inspiration that moved your body into action. You stepped forward. Can you think of a time when you stepped forward in your life as a disciple? You stepped forward into the waters of baptism. You stepped forward into the loving embrace of your community. You stepped forward to offer your hand when someone needed support. You stepped forward to share God's love with another. So take a moment to think of those times when you courageously stepped forward. When have you had the courage to stand? We stand with our community, with those we care about. We stand in prayer. We stand and sing. We stand in line for potluck. Standing is its own precious action when a disciple stands courageously. You stand to offer support. You stand to volunteer. You stand to make the space around you safe for others. When have you courageously stood as a disciple? In the joy of being truly yourself, loved and accepted in your community, how do you express yourself freely without fear or constraint? Are you comfortable being vulnerably yourself? Can you grab onto your authentic feelings in that moment and express them without inhibition? In your discipleship, what does it mean to have the courage to dance? It means you dance. It means you raise your hands in joy. You open your arms in love. You stomp your feet to the rhythm of life around you. You claim your space. You shout to the world, "This is me. This is what matters to me. You are what matters to me." When have you courageously danced in joy? There is a time to step forward and there is a time to step back. You step back to rest. You step back to learn. You step back to make room for others. Stepping back is not failure. Stepping back is not judgment. God calls you to step back sometimes. Step back to catch your breath, to discern, to check the map to make sure you're still headed where you wanted to go in the first place. When have you as a disciple been called to step back? And now we seek the courage to kneel. We have gathered as representatives of the greater body of Christ, which lives and moves in the Pacific Northwest. To serve that body, we kneel. On the first Sunday of the month, as we enter that sacred space of sacrament, we face the emblems of bread and juice and we kneel. In prayer, we kneel. In love, we kneel. reflecting on your life as a disciple, consider the times when you have responded to God by kneeling. Creator of wind and gravity and force and friction, move us. Call our bodies into action. Fill our hearts with the courage to move to the rhythm of discipleship. Fill our ears with the sounds of your creation around us. Bless us with the awareness of your Spirit's dance in our community that we can join. Amen.
As we enter into the time of considering priesthood calls, I would invite you to join in singing hymn number 582, You Have Come Down to the Lake Shore, following which Carrie Welch and Jeanette Harrison will share in a scripture reading.
From Colossians, chapters 3, verses 12 through 17. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body, you were called to peace, and be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to the God the Father through him.
Thank you, Carrie and Jeanette. Through the testimony of the Holy Spirit, World Church leadership has approved calls to the office of High Priest for Donald Welch and to the office of Evangelist for David Harrison. You can find each candidate's written testimony of his call on pages 48 through 50. Following their verbal testimonies, we have asked several individuals to offer brief affirmations of these calls, and we will then vote to sustain each of them. The chair will now invite a motion to sustain these priesthood calls as a whole, although we will vote individually for each call. I would invite a motion from the floor.
Susan Oxley from the Renton congregation, and with full heart and affirmation, I motion to, I move to sustain these two calls. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Is there a second? I see a second. I will now recognize Ron Harmon to share his testimony of Donald Welch's call. Sorry.
My brief testimony is on page 39. But I just want to express with respect to Donald's call that I've actually struggled with Donald's call for a while because I initially felt like I should be calling him to the office of bishop. You know, he's a financial officer, right? Isn't that what you do with financial officers? You call them to bishop. I mean, sometimes you even call apostles to bishop. So I gave this a lot of consideration, prayerful consideration. And one of the things that, at least in my times of prayer about this, became more and more evident was that Donald's leadership in ministry, although it has been expressed through his role as Mission Center financial officer, his sense of the church's mission and vision was broader than that role. And also, I increasingly became aware of Donald's important role that he plays in the broader leadership of the Mission Center itself. And again, although he brings a very important contribution as Mission Center financial officer, I was impressed with the fact that his contribution was beyond that more focused role, in addition to that focused role. And so really had a deep sense and a growing awareness over time that the call was really to the office of High Priest. And I was actually a little bit nervous about presenting that to Donald, because I didn't know what Donald's reaction would be, if he thought it should be to the office of bishop or the office of High Priest, or neither of the two. But there was a wonderful spirit in the Council of 12 when Donald's call was considered a spirit of affirmation. And when we had the opportunity to share with Donald about his call, I again sensed that spirit of affirmation just in the conversation that we had, that high priest was the appropriate office. And I just want to say that in my experience with Donald, it's an extension of the ministry that he's already providing to the Mission Center. So I fully support this call.
Thank you, Ron. As Ron and I discussed this call for Donald, I reflected back on Donald's hiring and coming into our Mission Center with pretty much no financial officer background, and this being a new field for him, and the steep learning curve that we both knew lay before him. As he has learned that aspect of his job, I have witnessed numerous times his vision, not just for this Mission Center, but his vision for our church, his vision for the world. And I have marveled at Donald's ability to navigate some of the difficult decisions and questions and situations that have arisen since he came on board with us. And the fact that he navigates those and speaks with people, not just through the lens of a financial officer, but through the lens of a minister of vision, which is what a high priest is called to. And I have been grateful for your participation in our leadership team, for your mentoring and your counsel that you give me. And I have been deeply aware that this call is right, and that Donald truly exhibits the qualities and characteristics of a minister of vision for this time. So I also fully support this call to Donald. At this time, I would invite David Pauly and Katie O'Keefe Knoble to join me up here to affirm Donald's call. And while they're coming up, I would like to read a letter of affirmation sent in from one of Donald's longtime friends. The World Church defines a high priest as someone who helps people bridge between what is and what could be, someone who shares a ministry of vision or helps someone see past their current reality and to understand and embrace what is possible. What a beautiful gift. In many ways, this call isn't a surprise, but more like an affirmation of something I've always known. Donald Welch, my brother in Christ, is on a very special path through life. I had just moved to the Oregon coast when I first met Donald. We were 8 years old. Even then, at camps and caravans, I was always drawn to what I saw as a spiritual confidence or maturity that Donald possessed. He always seemed to be able to easily forge deep connections with the adults around us as well as our peers, and I wanted to emulate that in my own life and relationships. If our friendships help define us, then I know a large part of who I am is due to his influence. As adults, I had the privilege of attending reunions in Iowa for several years with him and Carrie, and I was yet again reminded of that spiritual calling as I witnessed him in the role of a pastor of a large congregation and watched as our children made memories together on the grounds of a different campground. Again, I found myself in awe of his ability to minister to so many diverse people, each with a different set of spiritual needs. Even as he tried to carve out time for his own spiritual needs, he was always building relationships. During those years, my wife, Sarah, would remind him of his path through the church leading to Council Bluffs, and in several occasions would tell him that she expected him to one day be president prophet of the church. That was just good-natured fun between two friends, but underneath it was another affirmation of God's call for him. She too saw in him the potential for ministry with no limits that is not only visible, but continually growing and maturing. Whether texting each other 2,000 miles away, sailing in the Puget Sound, or hiking the majestic wilderness of Yosemite, I am so happy to witness this path you are on, my friend, and to affirm this call to high priest. Sincerely, Scott Comstock.
I first became aware of Donald Welch when I was a teenager. And he was born to his parents who were church members in North Bend, Oregon, where my father was pastor. We also shared a unique thing in that our grandmothers and grandfathers were members of the Woodburn congregation. And so at various times throughout our lives, as there would be family gatherings at Christmas time back to see Grandpa and Grandma and go to church, there was Donald. I am pastor at the Salem congregation, or one of the pastors at the Salem congregation. And I was thrilled when Donald and Carrie moved into our congregation. It thrilled me to be able to sit under the ministry of somebody that I have known their entire life. As pastors, we are often praying over the congregation about priesthood calls and trying to discern where God is calling our members. And so it was not a surprise to us as the pastor team when we found out that Donald had accepted a call to high priest. The Spirit is moving. And Donald is indeed a minister of vision, a minister who takes his calling seriously, and a person who shows compassion and care, not only for the whole body, but for those individuals that Donald comes in contact with. Individuals like my grandchildren, who I know are not perfect and might have just a bit of their grandfather's ornery side. But Donald and Carrie both show such immense love and compassion. Donald, I am honored to welcome you into the quorum of high priesthood. And I know that you will serve honorably and that you will serve to the best of your ability. And I am so thankful that I was able to speak in favor of your call.
I have so many things swirling around in my head. And so I wrote some things down and we'll see if what comes out is what I wrote down or what I just comes to my head. We'll see. I was thankful when Carrie and Donald came back to the Northwest too, because I felt like I'd been holding the ship up in Southern Oregon by myself for a long time. So not really, but a lot of our friends of our group moved away and said they were going to go to college or whatever, but didn't come back. So I've known Donald a long time. I remember being at kids camp with Donald when my aunt was pastor of kids camp, and his mom was my cabin counselor. And I liked her because she had bright red lipstick, was very pretty, and she was very nice. And she always was talking about Donald. Well, finally I saw Donald and he had very weird eyebrows. I remember. You know, those are the things you remember when you're a kid. Also not written down on my phone, so I need to refocus here. At different times in my life, Donald has been my friend, my boyfriend's best friend, my counselor, my minister, and always my brother. I've seen Donald always as a leader, even when we were kids, after I got over the eyebrows. 1 year on Caravan, Donald was even asked to be a navigator. I think it was Jody and Troy's first year on Caravan. He got to be a navigator like one of the adults, and he had a real map, not like a Google map. So I was pretty impressed with this because this was a leadership role he was being asked to take, and he was a kid. So I was in awe of this responsibility. A high priest in Community of Christ is called to be a minister of vision, to model Jesus as a servant leader, to focus on helping people bridge between what is and what could be. And I guess the part that struck me in that little bit of reading was that they're called to model Jesus as a servant leader. Sometimes we think of high priests as being way up there, and the rest of us are just, kind of the lowly elders doing the work. I think Donald's always been this. It's just who he is. He's a servant first, modeling Jesus in all that he does. More recently, I've known Donald in adulthood, and I've seen him work in different parts of the church throughout the US in different positions, and I'm thankful for his ministry. Last year, I watched him handle a very difficult situation in a branch of the church. He was professional, yet loving, decisive, yet kind, armed with scripture. He went to help this congregation, and his help was well received because even though he went in to make a big change, he went in as a servant. He helped this congregation make a bridge to a more peaceful community with more opportunity. When people shared their thoughts about this with me, I didn't feel surprised because I know Donald. And I wasn't surprised that he could take a tough situation and make it better. Since he's been back in the Northwest, I've also gotten to work on camps with him for the last couple of years. So other than the fact that he thinks it's a good idea to give kids a lot of pop and candy right before bed, thank goodness Jody and I were there to put the lid on that. I have found Donald to be a person that I could bounce ideas off of because I'm a verbal processor. And so I need somebody who will listen to my ideas and give me their ideas back. And then I'll usually do what I thought was best anyway. So, but it helped me. It helps me to have somebody that I can call and say, these are the things I'm thinking. What do you think? And then he says, yeah, do that. So it really has helped me to bridge what could be. Just this week, I talked to Donald about some possible changes in my own life. He talked about his life experience, and one thing he said in that conversation was, I was called and I chose to follow, or something like that. And I know that he has felt this call his whole life, and he chooses to follow, and it's a choice. And in that choice, he models Jesus because that's what Jesus did. Just a few years ago, I was a caravaner, and Donald was too. And I specifically remember Donald one time sharing a testimony, and in that testimony, he said, I don't know what it was about other than I remember this part. He said he was thankful to have a group of friends that he knew would stand behind him. And the whole group stood up behind him. They wanted to show their love for him and their support for him. I'm the only one, I believe, I'm the only one that is physically here that was in that group on that day. But I know that there are other people out there that support you, that love you, and that also see this leadership in you. So I want you to know that I'm standing here behind you, just as I was then.
And last but not least, I recognize that I skipped our order here a little bit. I would like to invite Donald up to share his testimony of his call.
Okay, so I hate this, so it won't take very long. But the very most important thing I've been told that I need to say is that I need to correct my bio because my mother tells me that I never lived in Coquille, Oregon. I was 2 years old and apparently I lived in Coos Bay, not Coquille. For those of you who even can differentiate those two cities and how far apart they are, I give you props. Very, very simple. There's a billion things I would love to say in response for everything that was said up here, but mostly I just want to say thank you for not telling the other stuff you know about me. My friends, what is in a name? My official testimony is in the Saturday packet, but in addition to that, I want you to consider that question. What is in a name? Or a title for that matter. In some Native American cultures, it was practice that a person would have multiple names in their lifetime, that they would start with a name that they were born with, that their parents gave them, and then as they grew older, significant things might happen to them. They had a better understanding of who they were as a person, and so they chose a different name for themselves. And this could happen multiple times in a person's life as they progressed through the phases of their life. When I found out about this and some of the reading that I've done, I found it to actually have a lot of parallels with the very reasons why I, from time to time, get tattoos on my body. Because they represent actual core values of mine. Things that I wish to remember and never forget. And so I make them a permanent part of my own identity. So high priest, when Ron presented this call to me and he was all nervous about it, I actually said, God, it's about time. Because I had felt the calling and at this phase in my life to be a high priest about 7 years ago. And I started living into it then, even though it officially had not been made real. It had not come to pass, however you want to say that. So really, my answer is this, is that I gladly will accept if you support this call in my life, but I'm going to do whatever God's telling me to do anyway. Thank you very much. I hope you can support.
We will now proceed to the vote. Those in favor of the motion to support Donald Welch's call to the office of High Priest, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Any opposed? Any wishing to abstain? I would also invite those non-delegates in the room who would like to show their support for Donald as well to raise your hands. Thank you. Motion carries. I will now recognize Ron Harmon again to share a testimony of the call for David Harrison to the office of evangelist.
Well, again, my more complete thoughts are on page 41 in your brochure. In that testimony, I mentioned an opportunity I got to have to get to know Dave a little bit better in a reunion experience, including some very competitive volleyball. The two of us got to play together. And during that week of having an opportunity to be with Dave, that was kind of the beginnings of this stirring inside of me. And of course, you know, I'd had the opportunity to have some conversation with Kim. And I knew that Dave was a very dedicated high priest to the Woodland Park congregation. I knew that's where his heart was. I knew he loved those people, still does. And I knew that he had a deep sense of commitment to that journey. And, but there was also this stirring about this call to the office of evangelist. And Dave has this deep, wide pastoral heart. And he doesn't even have to say anything. You just feel it in his presence. And he just kind of, that presence invites you in. And that's a lot of what the office of evangelist is creating that welcoming space. I also came to appreciate Dave's deep humility. And here was this individual that was so capable and qualified in so many ways, and yet was just so deeply humble about it. And probably did not fully appreciate at times the influence that his ministry had on the lives of people. And so I just wanted to share that because I feel like a lot of times, a lot of us don't have that full appreciation for our presence in ministry and what that means in the lives of other people. But in Dave's case, in my discerning of that call, and in my conversations with Kim about that call, I finally got to a point where I understood the concerns and the sense of commitment about the Woodland Park congregation, but the spirit was just too strong, Dave, about the call to the office of evangelist. And so we put that in your hands. I'm a big believer that the discernment process in terms of priesthood call is not complete until the individual that the call is presented to also has that affirmation. And my sense is that same unsettledness has also been working in Dave all this time. And I just want to give my affirmation to this community gathered today, that affirmation is the Holy Spirit, that you're called to extend the ministry of high priest that you've offered so freely as an evangelist in the life of the church.
Thank you, Ron. For those of you who may not know, Dave has been in my life for the better part of 45 years when my best friend decided he would be her boyfriend. And for many, many years, it was the three of us, Mr. and Mrs. Brady and Alice. And that said, Dave and I have a lot of history. And when I took this role as Mission Center president, we had some long conversations about the fact that there would be times that I would have to take my friend hat off and put my Mission Center hat on, Mission Center president hat on. And today I stand here wearing both hats. I have sat under David's ministry for decades as a member of the Woodland Park congregation, as he served as pastor for so many years, as a friend for more years, and as he has served as a wise counselor to me for the last 6 years. And this has been a journey that we've been on, that he and Jeanette have been on. But I would not be standing here today as a minister without the mentoring, the guidance, the modeling, the encouragement of Dave Harrison. He has been a blessing to more people than any of us know in many different ways. And I have known in my heart for decades that Dave's path would take him far beyond the walls of Woodland Park. And that has happened. And when I had the opportunity to present my first World Church minister call to Dave, it was like this long journey was coming to a fork, and we were moving forward in a new adventure. I could go on and on because you know me. So I will just leave it at my affirmation that Dave has been serving unofficially in the role of evangelist for a long time. The many prayers, blessings he has offered at various camps and events that many of you have attended would affirm that as well. Dave, I'd like to invite you to come up and share.
I'd like to say thank you to Ron and Kim for completely destroying my frail composure, but that's gonna have to wait. Good afternoon, community of Christ. It is been a long time coming for this day. I want to make two assumptions this afternoon, both of which may clearly at my own peril. One is that there are some of you here this afternoon that before you arrived this morning, printed all 89 pages of your conference bulletin and read every single one of them. Raise your hands. You're out there. Sorry. The other assumption would be that despite the utmost professionalism, the adherence to Robert's rules of orders, and the absolute electric atmosphere that Don and Kim brought to our orientation and business meeting, that's a joke, but that's okay. That you had at least a brief opportunity to flip through your conference bulletin and do some reading. If you didn't, my bio and my testimony are on pages 41 and 42. I'm not going to read those to you. Rather, I want to just elaborate a little bit on what brought this day to be. When we gathered last night downstairs for dinner, Ron had just gotten off a flight that was pretty bumpy getting into Portland with the wind. And the first, I asked him about his flight first, I guess. But the next thing he said to me is, are we finally going to get this done? And I reminded him that it had been 5 years, 4 months, and as of today, last night was 4 days, today is 5 days since my call was presented. And I just want to share real briefly just some of what took place during those 5 years, 4 months, and 5 days. Jeanette and I sold a we sold our home, which was also a wedding venue that we ran in Snohomish, Washington. We moved into town. We rented a beautiful home and we became townies, and I never thought we'd be townies. We didn't get to be townies very long because our very young landlord and her partner discovered that they were pregnant and they wanted their house back. So after a monumental move, we were moving again about 9 months later. 2 more unforeseen moves occurred in that period of time. We had been working for close to 3 years on plans to build a home on the property that my son Kyle, his wife Andrea, and their boys own. That seemed to be completely stalled, mired down in, well, just county bureaucracy one, but also the fact that they weren't operating in person. It was a period that fully 60% of which was dominated by a worldwide pandemic, during which our communities, our neighbors, Our families, our businesses were all gravely and all too often tragically impacted. Our congregational life came to a standstill. During one of those really brief windows that we thought we could reopen, I contacted our landlord and asked if it was all right if we resume in-person services, and they said, oh, absolutely, but we rented your space. So we lost our lease. Once again, our very nomadic congregation of Woodland Park was without a home. Individually and collectively, the pandemic left almost all of us isolated, alone, and very often lonely. And I will tell you this afternoon that I felt homeless, I felt disconnected, I felt adrift. I consider myself a problem solver. I get really frustrated if I can't fix something. And I had to admit myself that I could not fix everything that was happening in my life, or your life, in our country, or in our world. And I surrendered. By surrendering, I don't mean that I gave up. I didn't, and I haven't. Thought it was really interesting this morning that some of what Kim shared was the John Shedd nautical quote, Emily Rose's quotes, and then we sang hymn 582. Because the quote that I'd like to share with you is from Oswald Chambers. Oswald was an early 20th century Scottish Baptist evangelist and a teacher, and he put it this way: if you yourself do not cut the lines that tie you to the dock, God will have to use a storm to sever them and to send you out to sea. Put everything in your life afloat upon God, going out to sea on the great swelling tide of his purpose. So when I was no longer able to combat the storm, I surrendered to God. I cut the lines that tied me to the dock. I would share with you this morning, this afternoon, that in order to act courageously, whether that's the courage to dance, and Sean, I want that courage to dance, whether that is the courage to kneel, and for me that comes pretty easily, we must first trust that God is in control of our lives. That even in the midst of the divisiveness that exists around us today, we must trust in the words of Jeremiah 29:11, that they are still true today for me, just as they are for you. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. My path ahead, your path ahead, our path ahead may be shrouded in fog. It may reduce visibility to 50 feet in front of you driving 3 hours to Portland. It may be steep. It may contain many blind corners that you can't get a glimpse of what's coming. But if we will individually and collectively trust, if we will cut the lines that tie us to our own will, God will provide the means for us to act courageously. It would be presumptuous of me to wish to choose my own path. I've tried for 5 years, 4 months, and 5 days. But it's clear I don't truly know what the best path for me is. So I trust in the Lord, who knows me, to lead me by the path of his choosing, so that in all things, his will will be done.
Thank you, Dave. I'd like to invite Kathy Sharp and Susan Oxley to join me to share their testimonies and affirmations of David's call. Come on. And while you are coming up, I would like to share a letter from one of David's dear friends and colleagues, Deborah Towner. Couldn't be here. To the delegates, members, and guests, of this 2022 Greater Pacific Northwest Mission Center Conference, and to my dearest friends, Dave and Jeanette. It is with regret that I cannot be with you in person today, and it is my hope and prayer that you can hear my love and support through these words. I have known Dave and Jeanette for much of my life. We share a common history in the Seattle area and at Woodland Park. There are many who have gone before us, shaping us, forming us, people who have come in and out of our lives from the time we were very small. But clearly, it is in more recent years as adults that our friendship has grown deeper. We have worked, played, worshiped, and pastored together, sharing deeply and laughing deeply. It has been a rich journey, and I take great joy in our friendship. I have come to know Dave as a man of great faith. Grounded in God's grace, he is a deep thinker, constantly questioning, wanting to learn, willing to change, ever spirit-led as he seeks truth and justice in a challenging world. He has deep compassion for the unique and difficult conditions that we live in today, and I know that it is his desire to influence those conditions and bring light and blessings so desperately needed. Dave has been an unwavering rock and spiritual companion to many over the years. He shepherds people. He walks with them in confidence and in constant prayer. He provides desperately needed sanctuary for people in all walks of his life, in his congregation, in his family, across the diverse friendships, and even as he sits across his desk from people he works with. And in so doing, he blesses people. He represents and embodies Christ as a companion, a shepherd, a confidant, and a counselor. I have a deep respect for and total trust in Dave and how he lives every aspect of his life from a place of prayer with deep integrity in service to his Lord. As much as I love and support this tall, lean man, I must mention Jeanette, who I love more than words and who is critical to Dave's gifts and calling. Though she may be petite in stature, she is grand in her unwavering support of Dave and the many he walks with. Together they walk grounded in God, the creator, sustainer, and lover of us all. It is my joy and honor to support Dave's call to the office of evangelist. He has already been living a life of prayerful companion and blessing to many. And I would say this to Dave. Dave, there are many who have gone before you. I stand for you today, and I do not stand alone. It is like the giant redwoods in the forest. When you stand amongst them, there is an awe for and sense of the history, the stories of the giants that the giants tell, and those who went before us. It is like the water that falls as rain, moves through our bodies, back into the rivers and oceans, and falls again as rain. Living water that carries the DNA of you and I and everyone before us. It is like hundreds of pairs of hands held up in prayer, creating a beautiful cloud like mass of hands that hold you up light as air in the light. It is that cloud of witnesses that stand with you today. I stand with those past and present who have formed and shaped you into this time and into this call. My blessings and prayers go with you today and in the days ahead as you seek new expressions of your gifts in God's world and in this new capacity as evangelist, blessing many along the way. With all my love and support, Deborah Cawthorn-Towner.
Like Katie, I am throwing away my notes, wherever you are, Katie. Kathy Sharp, Crystal Springs Congregation. I am honored to affirm the divine call of David Harrison to evangelist. David and I have been connected in ministry more intensely over the past 17 years. And I'll tell you what David may not know himself about how that sort of got started. I was on the visiting ministry circuit as an elder, and because I lived in the North End, I naturally wanted to go to Woodland Park. But I also wanted to go because I knew that there were people at Woodland Park that were not sure about women's ministry. And so I would tell Stan Corrington, please put me into Woodland Park. I'm not sure that they will receive you. Well, what happened is Dave was a living sanctuary for me in every case. Whenever I preached there, Dave would endorse my ministry to the congregation and make me feel welcome and make me feel a qualified and welcome companion to them. And so I thank him for that. The role of the evangelist is to be a minister of blessing, to be a spiritual companion, to form relationships with people, to help them together with him or her discern how God is working in their lives and what might be around the corner for them, to guide them and to be a fellow spiritual traveler, to be a witness of Jesus Christ, to be a teacher and a learner, to have a pastoral presence, which we know he does, and finally, to be a living sanctuary. As an evangelist, David will be freed from the heavy burdens of administrative responsibility of high priest and pastor so that he can magnify his role as a safe place for people to be with, a loving, living sanctuary and spiritual companion for individuals and congregations, and also for families, all to help them find God's will for their futures. Those of you that are from Oregon may not realize that Woodland Park is one of the oldest congregations in Seattle, perhaps the oldest. I was there for their 100-year celebration, which was many years ago. And but in those 100 years, there was a time of a fractious past, and they had difficulty finding leadership from their own congregation because there were factions. And so Jeanette and Dave, when agreed to be pastors themselves, when it looked like the congregation might actually close if no other leadership could come forward. So Dave, with Jeanette's support and their entire family's support, pastored Woodland Park for nearly 35 years. Imagine. Years ago, when I was Mission Center president, during the time he was pastor, he had a disruptive experience with the Holy Spirit. And it was a new vision for him after all those decades of pastoring, that the congregation was more than a church building, that it was the people in that congregation. And so in sharing that testimony with me and with the members of his congregation, he led that church on an exodus of freedom for Woodland Park, an exodus from a building that was decaying and sucking their life and resources and time just to keep it going and keep the roof from leaking in a new place, and into a place of unknowing, a place of selling the building and making that building resources be applied not only in retaining their congregation, but also in mission. And it freed the focus and attention of the congregation on meeting the needs of people within and outside the church. Those were loving and sensitive interventions to offer a hand up and compassion and presence. David, I'm glad you shared your story of your own nomadic life, not willingly chosen necessarily. And even for Woodland Park, it was so courageous of them to step out into an unknown time. But I can think of no better experience as you are being a spiritual companion for others, because often people come to an evangelist at a time of transition in their lives. You know what it is to go through transitions. You know what it is to step forward in faith, even though the outcome is not clearly in front of you. David and Jeanette have demonstrated that they can embrace and lead risk and change and walk with others with love in that transition. I've also witnessed in Dave an expansion of his heart, almost to the part of it bursting. And for some people, it has burst in love of them. As he has become over the years more aware of God's expanding love for all people of all backgrounds and diversity, David himself has become that even more loving person, desiring to bless their distinctive life journeys. I will also say, I know this from Jeanette, that David provides a ministry of blessing in his professional life. You may not know that David does tax advising for people. And when you know someone's taxes, right, you know a lot about what's going on in their life. And his appointments for doing taxes together can often extend much longer into sharing the deep needs, the soul needs of his clients as they come in contact with him. He is famous for mentoring and blessing all people, particularly the young. He is famous for his children's sermons. Here are some that have heard many of them. And he also is wonderful at mentoring and being a living sanctuary for young adults, other church leaders, seniors, and particularly older adults facing end of life. I don't know if David knows how many funerals he's performed, but they are many. They are legion. So his loving experience as a pastor and a pastoral influence extends to many people. And what I would say is most important about the nature of David Harrison is his tender heart, a heart that nearly breaks out of love for people, as particularly as they are going through difficult situations. David has been and will be a spiritual companion that honors all life journeys and offers reassurance and hope and possibilities during life's changes and difficult moments, and always relaying a deep conviction and knowledge of God's unconditional love for each person, family, faith community, exemplifying the very love of Jesus Christ. And so for all these reasons and more, I am happy to recommend to this body that you affirm and sustain his call to evangelist.
Mark Murphy is a wonderful friend and fellow evangelist. And it should have been him standing here offering a testimony of the call for David Harrison to evangelist. But circumstances in his own life prevented him from coming. And I know from speaking to Mark a number of months ago how strong his testimony is for David's call to evangelist, and also his knowledge of the struggle that David has been through to reach this point in his life. So instead, I stand before you. I'm Susan Oxley from the Renton congregation, and I've known David for many, many years, and I've seen him grow and develop in his ministry. He has built a foundation of youth ministry that not only touched individual lives, but also provided a foundation of compassionate methods, expectations, procedures that other later youth ministers could build on. And were there when I became the youth minister. So from the beginning of my acquaintance with David, I benefited from the experiences that he'd had, the relationships he had made with youth, and the procedures and methods that he was clevering up and organizing up to put together that I was able to use in my own entry into youth ministry. For over 30 years, you've heard about how almost 35, he pastored the Woodland Park congregation, and he embodied the ministry of the high priest. He made courageous decisions that came out of his personal integrity and understanding of the gospel, and he could not be shaken. He assisted in very difficult transitions, and you've heard about at least one or two of those. He facilitated needed changes in the congregation even before they had to face the idea of moving out of their building. And he cast his vision over and over to rally the support of the congregation to follow where he led. And that's not easy. That's not something that always happens when changes are needed or transitions are required. And all of those are perfect examples of his ministry as a high priest. But through it all, the heart of the evangelist began to peep through and then it be expressed in a fuller flavor and then take over. He showed remarkable acceptance and care for the marginalized, whether they were youth or children or young adults or older adults. He understood, and he was that sanctuary. He had an immediate response to emergencies. Never hesitated. Was always there when there was an emergency and he was called. He blessed lives that were disrupted by grief, by loss, by job losses, by health crises. He prompted hope. He prompted hope in the lives of people who were struggling. And maybe it was struggling in changes with their lives, or maybe it was changes in their theology or changes in the church. But he brought hope into their lives and possibilities and helped them see a way forward. All of these are traits of the evangelist, and he became a blessing wherever he was. And you've been experiencing that for many years. I said to Dave just today, he's been half evangelist and half high priest for a long time. And we know that. He was being prepared by his experiences long before he was ever presented with the call to evangelist. And then that call was honed during these difficult 5 years of changes, of moves, of pandemic, of trying to find a new way forward. I stand before you to affirm that the Spirit has been moving in his life for many years. And that by the testimony of the Spirit to me, I can affirm his call to evangelist. I strongly supported the call when I heard about it, when I began to perceive it years ago. I strongly supported the call when I heard that it had been presented to him quietly and he was struggling with it. And I supported the call when he accepted it with courage, not knowing quite what this was going to do for his future. And I support it now with you. And David, I welcome you. I stand as a member of the Order of Evangelists, welcoming you to bring your ministry to join with ours in being that sanctuary, that pastoral presence, that minister of blessing, which you have been and are and will continue to be wherever you go.
I know you're tired hearing a lot about David, but I thought that it would be appropriate, being a longtime member of Woodland Park congregation and the journey that David and I have been on, that I would stand and represent our congregation and our affirmation that we have watched David's journey as well. We have walked alongside him. We have been truly ministered by the growth that he has shared with us and the journeys that we have struggled through together. And I just wanted to make that affirmation to you personally, David, on behalf of the entire congregation, that we have watched that growth because you have always shown that type of person that you are that has already been expressed, that you listen with your heart, that you take the time to discern your responses, that you're loyal, that you carry integrity. It is just who you are. And everyone notices and picks up on it. I have, and I know that your congregation has the deepest and utmost respect for your sincere servant heart. And we thank you for all the years that you have served us and served us so well. And with your companion, Jeanette, we love you. We continue to support you. We're with you all the way.
Thank you, Sharon and Susan and Kathy, for those affirmations. At this time, we will proceed to the vote, and I would ask that those who would support the motion of David Harrison's call to the office of evangelist to please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? I would also invite those non-delegates today who wish to support Dave's call to this office to signify by saying aye. Thank you. And the motion carries. We will now share in hymn number 586, the summons, following which Steve Pomeroy will offer a prayer of support for Donald and David in these priesthood calls. Steve has journeyed with each of them in different ways over many years, and I know stands as a friend, dear friend to each of them. So let us sing the summons.
Let us pray. God, who challenges and encourages us, what powerful questions have been placed before us as we have sung this hymn. While we sing to challenge and encourage Donald and David, we know that our responses are as reflective of our own willingness to commit to your work in the world as they are for these two beloved servants. For years, we have been widely blessed by the ministry that David and Donald have shared on our behalf and with us personally. We have benefited from the wisdom, talents, the generosity, the courage, and the spiritual direction each one has shared so readily. Now they answer your call to additional paths of ministry with us. And we desire to express to both of them our gratitude, our love, and our support for the new directions in which you will lead them. May our support provide them with the assurance that we will walk with them, pray for them and their families, seek to be understanding of their needs, offer our commitment to them, and be as dedicated to you as they are, O God, in this wondrous work and adventure you lead us all in. Holy One, we pause in the great joy of this moment to share our love for Donald, for David, and for their families, just as we share our love for you who has called them and this community to greater understanding of your purposes in the world. Let us turn, gracious God, and follow you and never be the same. In your company, we go together with Donald and David and move and live and grow in you as your love does through us. We ask your constant blessings upon David and Donald as they explore and share the ministries to which you have now called them. In the name of Jesus Christ, we uphold them to you. Amen.
We're almost there, folks. Just a few announcements before we adjourn today. Reminder for all of those who have volunteered to serve communion tomorrow morning, Dan and Faye Jackson will be meeting up in this corner, maybe 10 minutes after the service concludes. So please, if you're signed up to be a communion server, gather up here shortly after we conclude. Dinner is on your own tonight, and we invite you to enjoy fellowship with one another. I'd just like to remind those local folks that we have lots of out-of-towners here tonight. And so I would invite you to invite and exhibit hospitality to those who are traveling and may not have dinner plans tonight, and be familiar with restaurants in the area. Please also remember to set your clocks back an hour. We get an extra hour of sleep. And it's why we do that this weekend, because we'll get that extra hour of sleep. And then the pastors and the staff breakfast is tomorrow morning at 7:45 at the Grotto. So we will see you there. And Susan Oxley has a quick announcement.
Yes, all those who are involved with with sharing some element of the communion and ordination service tomorrow, please come early and meet with me. I need you here about half an hour. I'd prefer to have you here about 9:45 if you would, so that we can make sure that everybody's on board, everybody's here, everybody knows what they're doing. There's been a few little changes, so we just need to make sure that everything's taken care of. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So 9:45 for those of you who are participating in tomorrow's worship. And so with that, I now declare the 2022 Mission Center Conference adjourned. We invite all of you to gather back here tomorrow morning at 10:15 for praise singing, followed by our ordination and communion service. I'd like you to enjoy your evening and safe travels. Thank you, those serving as delegates, for your willingness to serve, and for all of you here today simply for being here and supporting the Mission Center, as well as the Mission Center leaders and staff and those who have been called into priesthood. This is an important process. It has been my honor and privilege to serve you this past year and to serve with so many wise and gifted colleagues. And I'm grateful for your support and your courage as we look to 2023 and beyond. With that, we will join in singing God of the Future, following which Gary Farnsworth will offer a prayer of blessing. And if you feel like standing, please feel free to do so.
Will you pray with me? Creator, coming up from our knees, we humbly see the end of this conference session as the blessing of new beginnings. We showed up here today wholeheartedly, like never before, knowing we truly could not and cannot control the outcomes, not today, not into the future. We also know we are not and can never be perfect, never even try. And we are all, each one and all together, wired to struggle. Yet we know every one single person here today is worthy of love and belonging. Many of us, even in this very moment, are experiencing fear, shame, grief, loneliness, and uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. Yet we recognize, and only through your love, grace, creation, and Jesus, our example, the amazing power of vulnerability. Thank you for sharing such beauty with us throughout the day. You've given us opportunity to experience authentic connection, accountability, honor, appreciation, loving kindness, innovation, laughter, singing, dancing, inspiration, surrender, trust, visionary leadership, and of course, courage. Creator, we feel deeply blessed by this experience of faith and spirit, and we envision who we are becoming. We envision our lives all for one and one for all, and wonder where we will go with spirit on the journey ahead in every day in the moment. We want to be sanctuaries of hope, joy, and presence to all we encounter. We want to be awake and ready to respond. We will have courage to risk something new and become an inspiration of love and peace. Thank you for listening.
We'll see you all tomorrow. Enjoy your evening. Thank you. What? Oh, badges, go where?